welcome back to BMGPG. You Packers fakes. We're just days away from the Week 3 showdown. Packers on the road versus the Cleveland Browns. Green Bay is rolling at 2-0, but there are some big questions, some injuries, and a chance to really make a statement. Let's dive in.
Yeah, so let's get into it, Bryson. So, first, quick check-in. So, as you mentioned, Green Bay is entering this game at 2-0. They're looking sharp, really on both sides of the ball this so far this early in the season. The defense, they've been disrupting offenses week 1, week 2, and the offense, they've been making some big plays when they need to, especially through the air. There's a lot of buzz amongst the Packer Nation fan base. And it's not just about the wins, right? It's how the Packers are winning these games. They're tough, fast, physical matchups, and they're passing all of those tests so far early in the season. But Bryson, with every win, there's going to come a lot more attention with this team, right? If you're going to be a true Super Bowl contender, it's going to be a lot more attention, a lot more pressure as the season builds on. So every mistake is really going to be magnified the further into the season we get. So that brings us to this, Bryson. So a quick injury update for this game. The injury side of things, it's one of the biggest storylines this week in Green Bay. So let's cover through that thoroughly here, Bryson, because it's going to impact how we see Green Bay perform versus the Cleveland Browns this week. So we know Jayden Reed, he's going to be out indefinitely with that. He did have surgery on that broken collarbone, and he also opted for the surgery on his Jones fracture in his left foot, so he knocked both of them out. But he's a huge loss in the receiver room for Green Bay.
I thought he was amazing in the Commanders game and the Lions game.
He has been, yeah. I mean, he certainly has stepped up this year so far, so his presence is certainly going to be missed. And then let's go to the offensive line side of the ball here, Bryson. So Aaron Banks has that groin and ankle injury, and Zach Toms with his oblique injury. Both were back at practice today, although they were limited basis. Banks did indicate today that he does plan to play this weekend. And these old offensive line guys, Bryson, they're going to be crucial when you consider the Browns' defensive front and their ability to get pressure on the quarterback. So a few other notes in the injury category: Nate Hobbs, Bo Melton, and Bo Melton's shoulder and Josh Jacobs' ankle. They did limit them in practice today. So they're all active parts to the roster, those three guys there, and you may see more reps from some of these backups depending on how the game starts to evolve in Cleveland this weekend. On a positive note, Jordan Love was at practice today throwing without a brace on his left.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, on his left hand for the first time since his preseason UCL surgery. So that's a promising sign for his hand strength, and it's going to improve his comfort in the pocket as well without having to worry about that brace and that hand injury that he's been dealing with. So yes, Packer fans, there are some question marks, but there's also a lot of depth on this team as we've learned this early in the season, and some good news ahead for Sunday, Bryson. Let's get into it here. So here's where the Packer fans are going to want to lean into this episode here. What gives Green Bay the edge and what they need to do to come out with another win this weekend? Because we know that Cleveland, they're struggling on offense, right? We got that check. But their defensive side of the ball has been spectacular. They are near the top of the defenses in the league this year. So it's not a pushover game by any means. But for Green Bay, the deep passing game, right? Green Bay has to be aggressive downfield, and they have been so far. Love is actually among the league leaders in 20-plus yard pass attempts, and has a high average yards per throw. And Cleveland, they're one of those teams that like to play a lot of man coverage, right? So they lead or at near the top of the league when it comes to playing man coverage. So I would expect that again this weekend. And that means there's going to be opportunities for Green Bay to stretch the field a little bit on Sunday with some of these speedier receivers, somebody like a Matthew Golden, right? And then the pass rush and defensive pressure, we've seen it so far through 2 weeks. Micah Parsons, Devontae Wyatt, and even our linebacker, Edgerrin Cooper, right? They're all making strong early season impacts for the Packers. And this defense, it's became a front that can be a force to be reckoned with for the Packers, right? And Cleveland's offensive line, they've shown some vulnerabilities here in the first couple weeks of the season. They've allowed several sacks, and they've really graded out poorly in pass protection.
Yeah.
When you look at the graded out on PFF, I don't know, you may not like PFF, but that's what we like to use a lot. And you look at that, and they've graded poorly in the pass protection. So this is certainly a spot for Green Bay to capitalize on this Sunday. And then the offensive line health and protection. So given that Banks and Tom are returning in a limited
Yeah.
fashion, the Packers offensive line performance, it's really going to shape how
Yeah.
fearless Green Bay can be in this game. So if the line holds up, Love's going to have time to let it fly deep, right? He's going to be able to throw the ball downfield, really stretch the field, use
Yeah.
play action, open up some of the run game that we struggled with early on in the year. And if the offensive line, if we have some struggles early on, you may see some more conservative calls and quicker passes that may dominate the game early on for the Packers, depending on how the offensive line's holding up. And then the receiver depth. Jayden Reed's out. We're going to need some playmakers to step up this game. And the burden's going to fall on guys like Romeo Doubs, Matthew Golden, Dontavian Wicks, and some of the other young guys at wide receiver. Tight end Tucker Kraft, he's going to be under the spotlight probably for the remainder of the season, especially after last week, that big game against the Commanders. The Browns defense, I could see them going into this game really trying to limit his production. So, again, you're going to have guys like Matthew Golden step up. I know he's a first-round pick. He's a rookie, but we're going to need him in Reed's absence for sure, Bryson.
Yeah.
So some of the matchups to watch this game, we've went through some of these in our previous episode, but how Green Bay's defensive line is going to match up with those tackles from the Cleveland Browns. As we mentioned, their tackles have not graded out well in pass protection. So especially if their tackle Conklin's unable to go, that's going to further inhibit their ability to pass protect for Cleveland. So
Yeah.
we're also going to look at Edgerrin Cooper, right? We mentioned his pass rushing abilities. We're going to see how he handles the rushing duties and tackles in space on that defense as well. If he's in the right spots, he can really change the tempo of that defense. We've seen it even going back to last season for him. And then special situations. When I mentioned that, I'm talking about third down, 2-minute drills, and the explosive plays, right? These tend to really decide some of these closer defensive games, especially when you have two great defenses going at it. These are the times where you see a team separate from the other ones here. So that'll be something to keep an eye on for this game here. Now, some of the bold predictions for this game and what could go wrong. Let's go with some of the bold predictions. So things are going to get a little bit spicy here, Bryson. Here are a few bold takes that Bryson and I have came up with possible, and then some of the possible pitfalls for this game. So first bold prediction, Bryson. We have Jordan Love throwing for 2 deep touchdowns, 1 to a wide receiver who hasn't made a big splash this season. Knock, knock. That's someone like Matthew Golden, right? Or somebody like Wicks who steps up this game. Another bold prediction, Bryson, here is the Packers defense.
Yeah. Forces at least 2 turnovers, maybe a sack, fumble, or interception that changes momentum in the second half.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Green Bay's going to force a couple turnovers this game, and I really think that's going to be the difference maker, especially, again, you have 2 great defenses out there this weekend. So some of the potential pitfalls for the Packers, if Green Bay's offensive line isn't, at full capacity, we have some guys like Anthony Belton rotating in there. Cleveland really could exploit that with the pressure and force early 3-and-outs on the Packers in this game. And without Reed, the Browns, you may see the Browns start to double team some of the guys or bracket some of our top wide receivers like a Romeo Doubs, even a Matthew Golden. So making other wide receivers work very hard to get open, right? So they have the ability to do that with Reed out. They could do that. Again, they like to play a lot of man coverage. And if the run game, if it's bottled up, we've seen it the first 2 games, we really struggled on our run blocking. If that gets bottled up and everything has to come through the air, the offense would risk becoming one-dimensional against a very good secondary in Cleveland. So with that, Bryson, I know the over-under for this game is sitting at about 42.5 points, with many of the sports books out there right now. I do expect this to be a lower scoring game, given that both defenses is pretty great. So I do expect that total to be under. Again, so Green Bay, they're going to have to play mistake-free football, and they're going to have to come out with a couple early turnovers. So that is our kind of predictions and kind of our pitfalls for the game. Now, in the end, Bryson, I think we both agree Green Bay should and will probably win this game, assuming some of the pieces come back in decent shape, right? So we gave our predictions yesterday. I still stand by those. I expect the Packers defense to dominate early in this game, forcing the Browns to be more one-dimensional. You've seen it in the first couple of weeks. The Browns are heavily relying on their pass because of the situation they've been in. I think they're about a 70-30 ratio when it comes to pass and run for the Browns. So I expect that again this week. By doing that, I think Jordan Love's going to be able to connect on some of the big shots downfield this week as well. And the offense if the offense can keep Cleveland off the field with long drives and avoid some of these negative plays that we've been seeing, some of these untimely holding penalties, those 10-yard holding penalties can really kill a drive. I think this one can stay under control in Green Bay's favor. But again, Green Bay, they should and probably will win this game, I think, but certainly not a team you can overlook with a defense of that caliber.
I think Packers win 35-10.
35-10. So that would put it over the 42.5, but they certainly could. It's a very, very formidable Cleveland defense. So Green Bay's going to have to really hone in. You can't overlook any games, right? As we mentioned, the more you win, and when you're winning in dominant fashion like Green Bay has, you're really going to be under a microscope. So, which is good, right? It's where we want to be. You'd rather have this pressure than not have this pressure, but certainly you cannot overlook Cleveland, especially with the way their defense is playing. So that is our breakdown for the game. We're going into Thursday, so we're just days away here now, Bryson. I'm super excited. We'll be back with some more as we lead into the game. But as always, Bryson,
it's Go Pack Go.